Hello everyone, welcome back to Learn English, Live Better. I'm Emily, and I'm here with my co-host Daniel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're diving into one of the hottest topics in language learning, the most effective ways to learn English. Whether you're just starting or you've been learning for a while, we've got some insights to supercharge your progress.
Learning a new language can feel overwhelming at times, but with the right approach, it becomes a fun and rewarding journey.
Absolutely. And the key word here is effective. Everyone's learning style is different, but today, we'll cover methods that work across the board and can be tailored to your personal needs.
Let's kick things off with one of the most powerful tools, active immersion. Active immersion means surrounding yourself with English in a way that keeps your brain engaged. For example, watch TV shows or movies with subtitles first in English, then, as you get more comfortable, turn them off.
That's a great point. And don't just watch analyze. Pay attention to how sentences are structured, the intonation of the speakers, and the slang or idiomatic expressions they use.
Another effective method is shadowing. Have you heard of this, Daniel?
Oh, yes, shadowing is when you listen to a sentence and then immediately repeat it, trying to match the pronunciation, tone, and rhythm. It's like being an actor rehearsing lines.
Exactly. It's a fantastic way to improve your pronunciation and mimic natural speech patterns.
Let's not forget about reading. Reading out loud is incredibly underrated. Not only does it help with vocabulary and grammar, but it also boosts confidence in speaking.
Definitely. And if you pair reading with listening, like audiobooks and their printed versions, you're reinforcing comprehension through two different inputs.
Speaking of inputs, one of the most effective ways to learn is through real conversations. Whether it's with a language partner, a tutor, or a friend, having real-time discussions forces you to think on your feet.
And don't shy away from mistakes. Every error is an opportunity to learn. I remember when I was learning French, I once said I am a fish instead of I am hungry.
That's a classic mix-up, but it's moments like that where the lesson sticks with you, right?
Totally. And it's a reminder that humor and patience are your best friends when learning a language.
Let's talk about tools. There are so many great apps out there: Duolingo, Babbel, Memrise, and even YouTube channels dedicated to English learning.
Yes, but don't just rely on apps. Combine them with traditional methods like keeping a vocabulary journal, where you write down new words, their meanings, and examples of how to use them.
Flashcards are another classic tool. Apps like Anki make it easy to create digital flashcards, which you can review anytime, anywhere.
And here's a pro tip. Use your phone's voice assistant to practice speaking. Ask questions, set reminders, or give commands in English. It's like having a mini conversation partner in your pocket.
Another crucial aspect of learning English effectively is building confidence. Many learners understand grammar and vocabulary but hesitate to speak because they fear making mistakes. Right. And the best way to overcome that fear is through consistent practice in low-pressure environments. For example, record yourself speaking and listen back. It might feel awkward at first, but it helps you identify areas for improvement.
Also, celebrate your progress. Whether it's mastering a tricky pronunciation or finishing a book in English, every milestone is worth acknowledging.
Absolutely. Learning a language isn't a race, it's a marathon. Enjoy the journey.
Before we wrap up, let's share a few long-term strategies for staying motivated and consistent.
Great idea. My first tip would be to connect English learning to your passions. If you love cooking, watch recipe videos in English. If you're into gaming, join English-speaking gaming communities.
That's a solid tip. I'd add that you should create a routine. Set aside specific times each day for English practice, even if it's just 10 minutes. Consistency is the secret ingredient to success.
And don't forget about creating a supportive environment. Surround yourself with people who encourage you, whether it's friends, family, or an online community.
Finally, remember to measure your progress. Take note of where you started and how far you've come. Sometimes we forget to give ourselves credit for the strides we've made. Let's keep this going because there's so much more to explore. We talked about consistency, tools, and methods, but there's another angle we should dive into: mindset.
Mindset is everything. When you approach language learning with the belief that you're capable, you'll push through challenges much more easily. A lot of learners get stuck because they think, I'm not good at languages.
Exactly. But here's the thing: learning a language isn't about talent. It's a skill. And like any skill, It gets better with practice. Think of it like going to the gym. You don't expect to lift heavy weights on your first day.
And let's not forget the importance of staying curious. For instance, instead of just memorizing vocabulary, ask questions like, why is this word used here? What's the cultural context behind this phrase?
That's such a good point. Understanding the culture behind a language can deepen your connection to it. For example, if you're learning British English, watching British sitcoms or reading about local traditions gives you a better grasp of the humor and expressions.
And the same goes for American English or Australian English. Even though it's all English, there are unique nuances, slang, and pronunciations. Exploring these differences can make your learning experience richer and more engaging.
Let's talk about something that every learner faces: plateaus. You know, that feeling when you're working hard, but it feels like you're not improving.
Oh, yes, it's so common. The key to breaking through a plateau is to change things up. If you've been focusing on grammar, switch to listening practice. If you've been watching movies, try reading articles or joining a discussion group.
And don't underestimate the power of taking a step back. Sometimes giving yourself a short break can help you come back with a fresh perspective.
Another thing that helps is testing yourself. Take online quizzes, try mock conversations, or even participate in English proficiency exams. Seeing tangible results can boost your confidence and motivation.
That's a great idea. And while we're on the subject of motivation, let's address procrastination. A lot of people plan to study but end up putting it off.
Procrastination is the enemy of progress. One way to fight it is to start small. Instead of saying, I'll study for an hour, commit to 5 minutes. Once you get started, you'll likely keep going.
Another tip is to create a dedicated space for learning. If you have a spot where you always practice English, it becomes a habit. Your brain associates that space with productivity.
Speaking of habits, let's shift gears to social learning. Learning with others is a game changer. Have you tried language exchange programs?
Yes, I love those. They're such a great way to practice speaking. And it's not just about language, you get to learn about someone else's culture, which is amazing.
Totally. Plus, explaining your native language to someone else can help you understand English better, especially when it comes to grammar and sentence structure.
And for those who are shy, online forums or chat groups can be a great alternative. Platforms like Reddit or Discord have communities where you can practice without the pressure of face-to-face conversations.
That's true. And if you prefer structure, look for workshops or group classes. The interaction and feedback you get in those settings can accelerate your progress.
Let's dive into some daily hacks for making English a part of your routine. One of my favorites is changing your phone's language to English.
Yes, it's such a simple change, but it forces you to interact with English constantly. Every time you check your notifications or use an app, you're learning.
Another idea is to keep a diary in English. At the end of each day, write about what you did, how you felt, or even what you plan to do tomorrow.
And here's a twist. Record yourself reading your diary entries. Listening to your own voice helps you notice pronunciation or grammar mistakes you might not catch otherwise.
That's a fantastic idea. And if you're into music, try learning the lyrics of English songs. Singing along is a fun way to improve pronunciation and rhythm.
Don't forget podcasts like this one. Listening while you commute or do chores makes learning feel effortless.
Yes, and for those who like a challenge, try summarizing what you hear in your own words. It's a great way to practice both listening and writing.
One thing we haven't talked about is frustration. It's normal to feel stuck or overwhelmed, especially when you encounter tricky grammar rules or words that seem impossible to pronounce.
Absolutely. My advice is to be kind to yourself. Learning a language is a big achievement, and it's okay to have off days.
And when you're frustrated, remember why you started. Maybe it's for your career, travel, or connecting with new people. Keeping your goal in mind can help you stay focused.
Also, take advantage of humor. Watch funny English videos or memes. Laughing while learning makes the process feel less like work and more like play.
That's such a good point. Language learning should be enjoyable. If you're not having fun, try switching things up until you find something that excites you.
All right. We've covered so much ground already: mindset, tools, habits, and overcoming challenges. But there's still so much more to explore. Let's keep this conversation going.
Definitely. There's no end to the ways you can approach learning English, and we're here to make sure you have everything you need to succeed. So, Emily, where do we go from here?
How about diving into the role of storytelling and creativity in language learning?
Great idea. Let's do it.
Storytelling and creativity, huh? That's such an interesting angle. Stories have this incredible power to make things stick in your mind. What's your take on how storytelling helps with language learning?
Stories are like glue for your memory. When you learn new words or phrases in the context of a story, they're easier to recall because they're tied to a narrative or emotion. For example, if you learn the word adventure through a story about someone exploring the Amazon rainforest, that word has meaning and imagery tied to it.
Absolutely. And what's great about stories is that you can create your own. Try writing short stories in English using the vocabulary or grammar rules you're learning. It doesn't have to be perfect, just let your imagination flow.
That's a fun idea, and let's not forget reading other people's stories. Reading books, whether they're novels, short stories, or even children's books, is one of the best ways to pick up natural sentence structures, idioms, and slang.
Totally. And audiobooks can take it a step further. Listening while you read along helps with pronunciation and comprehension. Plus, it's a great way to train your ear for different accents. Creativity doesn't stop with stories. Think about all the ways you can infuse creativity into your learning. For instance, if you're into art, try labeling your sketches in English.
Or if you enjoy music, write your own lyrics in English. It doesn't have to be professional, just putting your thoughts into words can be a great practice.
Exactly. And if you like cooking, turn that into a learning moment. Write out recipes in English or watch cooking tutorials on YouTube. The language becomes so much more practical when you use it in your daily life.
Another creative hack is role-playing. Pretend you're a tour guide showing someone around your city, or imagine you're a chef explaining a dish to a customer. Acting out scenarios makes learning interactive and memorable.
Oh, I love role-playing as a practice tool. It's such a low-pressure way to use English in a practical context. And speaking of interaction, let's touch on how collaboration can enhance creativity.
Learning with others is like having a mirror and a coach at the same time. You see your strengths and weaknesses more clearly, and you get immediate feedback.
Definitely. Group activities like creating a skit in English or working together on a project make learning feel less isolated and more fun. It's also a great way to build confidence.
And let's not forget peer editing. If you're writing essays or stories, having someone else read them can help you catch mistakes and learn new ways of expressing ideas.
Yes, and that works both ways. When you edit someone else's work, you get to see the language from a fresh perspective. It's like learning twice in one activity. Can we talk about games? There's such an underrated way to learn English. Word games, trivia, and even video games with rich storylines can teach you so much.
Oh, for sure. Games like Scrabble or Boggle are great for vocabulary. And even multiplayer games, where you need to communicate with teammates, force you to think and respond in English quickly.
Right. And don't underestimate board games. Games like Taboo or Charades can be adapted for language learning, especially in group settings.
Plus, games take the pressure off. You're not sitting down to study, you're just having fun, and the learning happens naturally.
Now, here's something important: balancing input and output. A lot of learners focus too much on one or the other.
That's so true. Input like listening and reading is essential for building a foundation. But if you're not using what you've learned, it's hard to make it stick.
Exactly. A good rule of thumb is to follow the 70-30 rule. Spend 70% of your time on input and 30% on output. So if you're reading for an hour, spend 20 minutes speaking or writing about what you've read.
And it doesn't have to be perfect output. The goal is just to get your thoughts out there. Even talking out loud to yourself in English is a great way to build fluency.
Another thing we haven't fully explored is immersion. You don't have to travel to an English-speaking country to immerse yourself.
That's true. You can create a mini immersion environment wherever you are. Surround yourself with English media, change the language settings on your devices, and try to think in English throughout the day.
And if you're lucky enough to live in a multicultural area, seek out opportunities to interact with English speakers. Community events, language meetups, or even volunteering can give you real-life practice.
Virtual immersion is another option. Join online communities where English is the primary language, or find a pen pal for email or video exchanges.
Let's talk about long-term goals. It's easy to lose motivation if you don't have a clear sense of what you're working toward.
Agreed. Set milestones like passing a specific exam, reading a book in English, or even being able to hold a conversation without hesitation.
And track your progress. Keep a journal of what you've learned each week or record yourself speaking. It's so rewarding to look back and see how far you've come.
And celebrate those wins, whether it's finishing your first English novel or successfully ordering food at a restaurant. Every step forward is worth celebrating.
Couldn't agree more. Progress, no matter how small, is still progress.
So, Emily, where do we take this discussion next?
How about diving deeper into the emotional side of learning? Like how to stay motivated when things get tough or how to deal with language anxiety.
That sounds perfect. Let's unpack that.
Language anxiety, that's a huge barrier for so many learners. It's that fear of being judged or making mistakes. But honestly, mistakes are a sign of progress.
Absolutely. If you're not making mistakes, you're not pushing yourself enough. One way to overcome anxiety is to start small. Practice speaking in low-pressure environments, like with a trusted friend or even recording yourself.
And don't be afraid to use filler phrases when you're thinking, like "let me see," or "how can I say this?" It's what native speakers do all the time, so it makes you sound more natural.
Another tip is to shift your focus from yourself to the conversation. Instead of worrying about how you sound, focus on understanding the other person and connecting with them.
That's such good advice. And staying motivated can be tough, especially when you feel like you're not improving. I always tell people to celebrate the small wins like learning 10 new words or finishing a podcast episode in English.
Motivation also comes from variety. If you're getting bored, switch things up. Try a new learning app, watch a different genre of TV show, or explore a hobby in English.
Let's dive into routines, because consistency is key. What's your take on building a sustainable language learning routine?
I think the best routines are flexible but consistent. For example, you might dedicate 30 minutes every morning to English, but you vary the activities like reading one day and listening to podcasts the next.
Yes, and habits stack really well. Pair your English practice with something you already do, like listening to a podcast while exercising or reviewing vocabulary during your commute.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of a good app. There are so many out there that can help you stay on track, whether it's for vocabulary, grammar, or speaking practice.
Another thing that's incredibly helpful is practicing with real-world scenarios. For example, if you're planning to travel, learn how to order food or ask for directions in English.
Yes, and even if you're not traveling, you can simulate those situations. Practice ordering at an English-speaking restaurant in your area or writing a formal email to a company.
Speaking of emails, writing is such a great way to practice your formal English. You can write mock emails, essays, or even letters to your future self.
And don't forget about listening to how English is actually spoken in different situations. Watch interviews, listen to TED Talks, or even eavesdrop on conversations in movies to see how language is adapted.
Let's not forget the importance of having a supportive environment. Learning is so much easier when you have people cheering you on.
Agreed. Find a study buddy or join a language exchange group. Having someone to share your progress and struggles with makes a huge difference.
And if you're learning on your own, create a positive space. Set up a dedicated corner for studying, surround yourself with motivational quotes, or track your progress visually with a chart.
A positive mindset is crucial too. Instead of saying, "I'm bad at English," reframe it to, "I'm still learning English, and I'm improving every day."
We can talk about learning English without touching on culture. Understanding the culture behind the language adds so much depth to your learning.
That's true. Language and culture go hand in hand. For example, understanding humor, idioms, or even body language in English makes your communication much more natural.
And you can explore culture in so many ways: watching movies, listening to music, or even reading about the history of English-speaking countries.
Food is another fun entry point. Cooking recipes from different cultures gives you a chance to learn new vocabulary while enjoying delicious meals.
Let's talk about plateaus, because every learner hits one at some point. What do you recommend for breaking through?
The first thing is to change your approach. If you've been focusing on grammar, switch to speaking practice. If you're stuck with vocabulary, try learning phrases instead of individual words.
Yes, and setting new challenges can help too. Maybe start a new project in English, like writing a blog or creating a video diary.
Another thing is to review what you already know. Sometimes revisiting old material shows you just how much you've improved, and that boost of confidence can be all you need to keep going.
And don't forget to take breaks. Sometimes stepping away for a day or two helps you come back with fresh energy.
So, Emily, what else should we explore in this journey of language learning?
How about diving into how technology and AI are changing the way we learn languages?
That's an exciting topic. Let's get into it.
Let's dive into how technology and AI are transforming language learning. It's incredible how tools like translation apps, speech recognition, and personalized learning platforms make the process so much more efficient.
Definitely. For example, AI-powered apps like Duolingo or Babbel adapt to your level and learning speed. They can identify your weaknesses and create exercises to target them.
And let's not forget speech recognition. Apps now provide real-time feedback on your pronunciation, helping you sound more natural over time. You can even mimic native speakers' intonation and stress patterns.
That's a game changer, especially for learners who don't have access to native speakers. Virtual reality is another emerging tool. Imagine practicing English in a simulated environment, like ordering coffee in a cafe or navigating an airport.
Oh, I've tried one of those VR programs. It really immerses you in real-life scenarios without the fear of being judged. And then there are AI chatbots, like this one we're using. They're great for practicing conversational English anytime.
True, you can have unlimited conversations without worrying about taking someone else's time. The chatbot can also introduce you to idiomatic expressions, slang, and context-specific vocabulary.
But technology isn't without challenges. One common issue is over-reliance on apps. Some people might only practice with apps and miss out on real-world interaction.
Right, apps are amazing, but they should complement traditional methods, not replace them. It's essential to step out of your comfort zone and interact with real people, whether online or in person.
Agreed. Another challenge is filtering through all the resources out there. With so many apps, websites, and tools, it can be overwhelming to know where to start.
That's where having a clear goal comes in handy. For example, if your goal is conversational fluency, focus on apps and tools that prioritize speaking and listening over grammar drills.
Exactly. And don't forget about consistency. It's easy to get excited about a new tool and then lose interest after a few weeks. Setting a routine helps you stick with it. So, what's your take on blending traditional methods with modern tools?
I think it's the best approach. For example, you could start with an app to build your foundation, and then join a local English class or conversation group to practice speaking.
Yes, and reading physical books or newspapers can help balance all the screen time. Plus, writing with pen and paper reinforces memory in a different way compared to typing.
That's a great point. Flashcards, whether digital or physical, are another versatile tool. You can use apps like Anki for advanced learners or create your own cards for personal use.
And let's not forget the power of journaling in English. Writing daily entries helps with vocabulary, grammar, and expressing your thoughts. It's like having a conversation with yourself. Another fun way to learn English is through media. Watching TV shows, movies, or YouTube videos can be incredibly effective. You pick up slang, accents, and cultural references without even realizing it.
And don't overlook the power of subtitles. Start with subtitles in your native language, then switch to English subtitles, and eventually try watching without any subtitles at all.
Yes, music is another underrated tool. Listening to English songs, reading the lyrics, and even singing along can improve your pronunciation and vocabulary.
Podcasts are fantastic too. There are so many out there tailored for English learners, with slower speech and explanations of new words. Plus, you can listen while commuting, exercising, or doing chores.
Motivation is critical, but discipline is what keeps you going when motivation fades. Have you ever used rewards to keep yourself on track?
Absolutely. I set small goals and reward myself when I achieve them. For example, after completing a week of daily practice, I might treat myself to a favorite snack or watch a movie.
That's a great strategy. And sometimes reflecting on why you started learning English can reignite your passion. Whether it's for career opportunities, travel, or personal growth, keeping your why in mind helps.
I also think accountability is underrated. Telling someone about your goals, like a friend or family member, creates a sense of responsibility. you're more likely to stick with your plan.
And sharing your progress with others can be incredibly motivating. Whether it's posting on social media or joining a study group, the support and encouragement you receive can make a big difference.
Emily, have you ever thought about how people learn languages differently based on their personality types?
That's a fascinating topic. Extroverts might thrive in conversation groups, while introverts could excel with self-study methods. Let's explore that next.
Perfect. This is getting interesting. So, let's continue.
Right, Daniel. It's true that personality plays a massive role in how someone approaches learning a language. For example, extroverts often feel energized by social interactions and may prefer immersive experiences like conversation clubs, group classes, or even traveling to English-speaking countries.
That's so accurate. Extroverts thrive in environments where they can actively use the language, like participating in discussions or role-playing scenarios. On the other hand, introverts might prefer quieter, more structured settings. They're often drawn to independent study methods like reading, writing, or using language apps.
Absolutely. And the key here is recognizing your strengths and leveraging them. For example, if you're an introvert and feel shy about speaking in front of others, you can start by practicing in front of a mirror or recording yourself. These strategies build confidence over time.
That's a great point, Emily. It's also important to note that introverts often excel in areas like listening and reading comprehension because they're naturally reflective and attentive to detail. Those are critical skills in language learning.
Speaking of reflective learning, journaling is a fantastic tool for introverts and extroverts alike. Writing about your day, your goals, or even your struggles in English can help reinforce vocabulary and improve grammar. Plus, it's a great way to express yourself.
And for extroverts, vlogging might be an exciting alternative to journaling. Recording short videos about your day or thoughts in English not only helps with fluency but also gives you a chance to review and analyze your speaking skills later.
That's brilliant. And let's not forget the value of combining methods. For example, an introvert might start with solo study and gradually join online communities, while an extrovert might pair interactive classes with some quiet time to reflect and review.
Right. Flexibility is crucial. You don't have to stick to just one approach. If something doesn't work, switch it up. The goal is to create a balanced routine that suits your learning style and keeps you engaged.
Daniel, have you noticed how understanding culture goes hand in hand with learning a language?
Oh, for sure. Language is deeply tied to culture. If you want to sound natural, you need to understand how people actually use the language in different contexts like greetings, idiomatic expressions, or even humor.
Exactly. For instance, in English, phrases like "how's it going?" or "what's up?" are common casual greetings, but they're not meant to be taken literally. Understanding the cultural nuances behind such phrases makes communication smoother and more enjoyable.
And culture also influences things like body language and tone. For example, English speakers often use a polite, indirect tone, especially in formal or professional settings. Phrases like "I was wondering if you could," or "would you mind if," soften requests and make them sound more polite.
Yes, and exposing yourself to culture through movies, TV shows, and books is one of the best ways to learn. Watching how native speakers interact can teach you a lot about their norms and values.
It's also a great way to learn idioms and slang, which are often tied to specific cultural contexts. For example, phrases like "spill the beans" or "hit the nail on the head" might confuse someone who only learns English from textbooks.
So true. And let's not forget food culture. Learning about traditional dishes, recipes, or even how people order food at a restaurant can make language learning more fun and relatable. Plus, it's an excellent conversation starter.
Emily, let's talk about something less technical but equally important: emotions. How do you think emotions impact the learning process?
Oh, they play a huge role. Positive emotions, like excitement or curiosity, can make learning enjoyable and help you retain information longer. On the other hand, negative emotions like frustration or fear of making mistakes can create barriers.
Absolutely. That's why building a supportive learning environment is so important. Whether it's finding an encouraging teacher or a patient language partner, having people who cheer you on can make all the difference.
And let's not underestimate the power of self-compassion. It's okay to have off days or to make mistakes. Instead of being hard on yourself, focus on how far you've come.
I love that. And celebrating small victories like understanding a tricky grammar rule or using a new word correctly can boost your confidence and keep you motivated.
That's why mindset is so critical. If you approach language learning with a growth mindset, you'll see challenges as opportunities to learn rather than setbacks.
Exactly. And remember, learning a language isn't a linear process. There will be ups and downs, but as long as you keep going, you're making progress.
Let's shift back to technology for a moment. One of the best things about modern tools is how they allow you to personalize your learning journey.
Totally. For example, many apps let you choose specific goals, like improving your speaking or expanding your vocabulary. This way, you can focus on what matters most to you.
And AI-powered platforms can analyze your strengths and weaknesses to create customized lessons. It's like having a personal tutor available 24/7.
Plus, you can track your progress over time. Seeing how much you've improved can be incredibly motivating.
Don't forget about social features. Many apps now have forums or community sections where you can connect with other learners, ask questions, and share tips.
And for those who prefer a more interactive experience, there are online platforms where you can take live classes or find language exchange partners.
It's amazing how technology has made language learning more accessible and engaging. But at the end of the day, it's your commitment and effort that drives success.
Couldn't agree more. So, Emily, what's your take on?
So, Daniel, speaking of commitment, let's dive into the importance of developing daily habits for learning. How do you think people can integrate English into their everyday lives without feeling overwhelmed?
That's a great question, Emily. I think the secret lies in making English a natural part of your routine. For example, if you're a morning person, start your day with a short English podcast or some vocabulary practice. If you're a night owl, maybe end your day by journaling in English about what you did.
I love that. And it doesn't have to take hours. Even 10 or 15 minutes a day can have a huge impact over time. You just need to be consistent. One idea I really like is setting English-only moments during the day, like committing to only using English when messaging friends or searching for information online.
Yes, and those small changes can snowball into bigger improvements. Another idea is to create visual reminders. For instance, you could label items in your house with sticky notes that have their English names. Imagine walking into your kitchen and seeing refrigerator or microwave.
That's such a simple but effective technique. Another thing people underestimate is the power of mindfulness. When you're learning English, really focus on it. For example, if you're reading, don't just skim the words. Take a moment to really absorb the meaning, look up unfamiliar words, and try to use them later.
That's a fantastic tip. And speaking of using new words, how about practicing shadowing? You listen to a short clip of native speakers, maybe from a podcast or TV show, and then try to repeat what they say, matching their pronunciation and intonation.
Shadowing is so powerful. It helps with not just pronunciation but also rhythm and natural speech patterns. And it's something you can do anywhere, even while you're commuting. Let's switch gears a bit, Daniel. What do you think about storytelling as a learning tool?
Oh, storytelling is incredible. When you hear or tell stories, it makes the language come alive. It's not just about words or grammar, it's about connecting ideas, emotions, and contexts. Plus, stories are memorable, so they help you retain information better.
Definitely. And creating your own stories in English can be a fantastic practice. You don't have to write a novel just short. Simple narratives about your day or even fictional scenarios can work wonders.
And if writing isn't your thing, you can always record yourself telling a story. It's great practice for speaking and listening. You can even go back and listen to see how much you've improved over time.
Another benefit of storytelling is that it teaches you natural transitions, like then, after that, or suddenly. These are so important for fluency, yet they're often overlooked in traditional language lessons.
That's a great point, and stories can also introduce you to cultural elements. For example, reading English fairy tales, fables, or even modern short stories can give you a glimpse into how native speakers think and express themselves.
Let's touch on something that's often seen as negative: making mistakes. Daniel, what's your take on embracing mistakes as part of the learning journey?
I think mistakes are one of the most valuable learning tools we have. They're not failures, they're feedback. Each mistake shows you where you can improve, and that's a good thing.
Exactly. And it's so important to change your mindset about mistakes. Instead of feeling embarrassed or frustrated, think of them as opportunities to learn. If someone corrects you, thank them. That's how you grow.
Right. And one way to get comfortable with making mistakes is by putting yourself in low-pressure situations. For example, start practicing with a friend or language partner who you know won't judge you. Once you feel more confident, you can move on to speaking with strangers or joining larger groups.
That's a great approach. And don't forget to analyze your mistakes. If you keep forgetting a certain grammar rule or mispronouncing a word, take the time to focus on it and practice until it becomes second nature.
And let's not underestimate the power of laughter. Sometimes, mistakes can be funny, and laughing about them makes the experience less stressful. It's all part of the process.
Daniel, have you ever hit a language plateau? You know, that stage where it feels like you're not improving no matter how much you practice.
Oh, absolutely. It's a frustrating place to be, but it's also a sign that you're ready to take your skills to the next level. When I hit a plateau, I try to shake up my routine. For example, if I've been focusing a lot on reading, I'll switch to speaking or listening.
That's such a good strategy. Sometimes all it takes is a new challenge to reignite your motivation. For instance, you could set a goal to give a short presentation in English or participate in a debate.
Or even try something fun, like learning English through music or dance. Karaoke is a great way to improve pronunciation while having a blast.
I love that idea. And plateaus can also be a good time to reflect on your progress. Look back at where you started and recognize how far you've come. Sometimes, we're improving more than we realize. We just need to take a step back and see the bigger picture.
So true. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback from others. A fresh perspective can help you identify areas for improvement that you might not notice yourself.
And if all else fails, remember that persistence is key. Plateaus are temporary, and as long as you keep going, you'll break through eventually. You know, Emily, it's fascinating how learning English or any language isn't just about studying. It's about adapting, experimenting, and staying curious. Absolutely. The journey itself is so enriching. Every step you take, every word you learn, brings you closer to being able to connect with the world in new ways.
That's what makes it all so rewarding. Speaking of connection, how about we Speaking of connection, how about we dive into how English opens doors to global opportunities? I mean, think about it, English isn't just a language. It's a bridge that connects people, ideas, and cultures.
You're so right. And that bridge is vital, especially in today's interconnected world. For example, job markets increasingly demand English proficiency, not just for communication but for collaboration on international projects. Being fluent in English can open up career opportunities you might never have imagined.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting a job, it's about having a voice in global conversations. Whether it's participating in international conferences, collaborating on research, or even engaging in online communities, English is often the common thread.
And let's not forget about the world of academia. A lot of research papers, scientific journals, and even online courses are published in English. If you're a student or a lifelong learner, knowing English gives you access to a wealth of knowledge.
That's a huge point, Emily. And while we're on the topic of access, let's talk about how English connects you to different forms of entertainment and media. From Hollywood movies to popular books and YouTube channels, being able to understand English means you're not relying on translations or subtitles.
Yes, and it's not just about understanding. It's about experiencing things as they were meant to be. Watching a movie in its original language or reading a book without translation gives you a deeper appreciation of the culture and the story.
You know, another interesting aspect of learning English is the social connections it brings. When you speak English, you can connect with people from all over the world, whether it's through travel, online forums, or even gaming.
That's so true. I've met so many amazing people just by joining English-speaking communities. And it's incredible how those connections can enrich your life. You learn not just about the language but also about different cultures, perspectives, and lifestyles.
And those connections can be a huge motivator. When you're chatting with friends or working on a project with international colleagues, you're practicing without even realizing it. It's practical, natural, and fun.
Plus, Speaking English can help you navigate situations you might not expect, like meeting tourists in your own city or helping someone who doesn't speak your native language. It's a skill that makes you more adaptable and resourceful.
Emily, let's talk about confidence. I feel like one of the biggest hurdles people face when learning English is feeling shy or afraid of making mistakes.
Absolutely. Confidence is key, and it comes with practice. The more you use the language, the more comfortable you'll feel. It's like learning to ride a bike at first. You might wobble, but eventually, you'll find your balance.
And let's not forget the power of positive reinforcement. Celebrate small wins, like ordering food in English at a cafe or successfully giving directions to someone. These moments build your confidence step by step.
Yes, and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Try speaking in front of a small group or participating in a language exchange. It might feel scary at first, but those experiences are where real growth happens.
And if you're nervous, remember, most people are supportive and understanding. They appreciate the effort you're making to communicate in their language.
Speaking of tools for learning, Daniel, what's your take on using technology to boost English skills?
Oh, technology is a game changer. From language learning apps to online dictionaries, there are so many resources at our fingertips. You can practice speaking with AI tools, take interactive grammar quizzes, or even join virtual classrooms.
And let's not forget about YouTube and podcasts. They're amazing for improving listening skills and learning natural expressions. Plus, you can choose topics that genuinely interest you, which makes the learning process more engaging.
Absolutely. And if you're into social media, following English-speaking influencers or joining groups where people share tips and content in English can make learning feel less like studying and more like a hobby.
And technology isn't just about content, it's about connection. You can join forums, participate in live streams, or even find language partners through apps. It's like having the whole world as your classroom.
So, Emily, when you think about the journey of learning English, what stands out to you the most?
For me, it's the idea that learning English isn't just about mastering a language, it's about opening doors, building relationships, and discovering new parts of yourself.
That's beautifully said. And the journey is as rewarding as the destination, don't you think?
Definitely. Every new word, every conversation, every small achievement, it all adds up to something incredible. And the best part is, the journey never really ends.
Exactly. Language learning is a lifelong adventure, and the possibilities are endless. So why not embrace it?
Absolutely, Daniel. And when we think about it, language learning doesn't just happen in structured environments like schools or language courses. It can happen in real-life situations too. Just the other day, I was at the grocery store, and I struck up a conversation with a cashier in English. I was nervous at first, but I knew it was a great opportunity to practice.
I love that. Those kinds of everyday interactions are perfect for improving language skills. It doesn't have to be a formal lesson to be valuable. A quick chat with a barista or asking for directions in English, it all counts. And the more you do it, the more you'll realize that you're building not just language skills but confidence as well. Exactly. And when you think about immersion, it's not just about being surrounded by English in books or videos, it's about integrating English into your daily life. I remember a time when I switched my phone settings to English just to make sure I was surrounded by it all the time. Oh, that's a great tip. I did that too. It's a simple but effective way to get constant exposure. It's like your phone becomes a mini English learning environment, and every time you interact with it, you're reinforcing what you've learned.
And what's great is that you can do this with anything: apps, social media, news websites. The more you interact with content in English, the more natural it becomes. And because it's stuff you already use in your daily life, it doesn't feel like extra work.
Right. And, as you said before, listening is a huge part of learning. It's not just about hearing English in movies or TV shows, but also in real-world contexts like music, podcasts, or news broadcasts. Even casual YouTube videos can expose you to new vocabulary and slang.
And the best part is you can choose content that genuinely interests you. If you like cooking, follow YouTube channels where chefs explain recipes in English. If you're into technology, find podcasts or blogs that talk about the latest tech news. That way, you're learning the language while doing something you enjoy.
That's such a good point. Learning doesn't feel like a chore when it aligns with your hobbies and interests. And listening to natural conversations, whether it's through podcasts or YouTube, teaches you how people really talk, not just textbook language.
Absolutely. And that brings us to speaking. As much as listening is important, speaking is where you can really see progress. And I know it can be intimidating at first, but the key is to keep practicing. I always tell people to start small, maybe just repeating phrases they hear in movies or podcasts. It helps you get the rhythm and pronunciation right.
Yeah, and you don't need to speak perfectly. It's about making yourself understood and enjoying the process of learning. Mistakes are a natural part of that journey, and they help you improve.
Exactly. I remember the first time I spoke in English to a native speaker. I was so nervous, but I made a mistake, and the person just smiled and corrected me gently. That moment really helped me realize that everyone makes mistakes, and they don't define your ability to communicate.
That's a great story. And those experiences are what build resilience and confidence in your language journey. The more you put yourself out there, the more you realize that people are supportive and understanding when you're trying your best.
That's so true. And I think it's also important to set realistic expectations. Learning a language, especially a language as rich and vast as English, takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. But when you look back after a few months or even a year, you'll see how far you've come.
It's all about patience and consistency. Even if you only practice for 15 or 20 minutes a day, that's still progress. And as you keep going, the small efforts really add up.
I love how you put that. The key is not to focus on being perfect, but to enjoy the process. Every day is an opportunity to learn something new, whether it's a word, a phrase, or an understanding of how the language works.
Absolutely. And when you start enjoying the process, the results will come naturally. It's like a snowball effect, small steps leading to bigger leaps.
Right. And that's what makes it so rewarding. The journey of learning English isn't just about reaching a destination. It's about all the growth and discovery along the way.
And let's not forget the cultural exchange that comes with learning English. It's not just about learning a language, it's about understanding the people, the history, and the stories behind it.
Yes, exactly. And when you start connecting with native speakers, you get to learn about their experiences, their humor, and even the idioms they use. It's fascinating how language is tied to culture.
Definitely. And that's another reason why learning English is so valuable. It's not just about communicating, it's about building bridges between cultures and expanding your worldview.
And in today's world, that's more important than ever. The ability to understand and connect with people from different backgrounds can lead to greater empathy and collaboration.
It really does. And learning English is one way to be a part of that global conversation. It opens up opportunities for personal growth, cultural exchange, and professional success.
And the best part is that no matter where you start, there's always room to improve. The more you learn, the more you'll realize how much there is to discover.
Exactly. It's an ongoing adventure, and the more you dive in, the more rewarding it becomes.
Well said, Daniel. I think we've covered so much today, and I hope everyone feels inspired to continue their English learning journey. There's no better time than now to start or keep going.
Another thing worth mentioning is how important mindset is when learning English or any language, for that matter. Sometimes, we get so focused on what we can't do yet that we forget to celebrate the things we've already accomplished.
That's so true. I always tell my students to keep a journal of their progress. Write down new words they've learned, phrases they've mastered, or even just moments when they successfully used English in a real-world situation. Looking back on those can be incredibly motivating.
Absolutely. And that's why positive reinforcement is so important. Reward yourself when you hit milestones, no matter how small they seem. Finished your first book in English, celebrate. Watched a movie without subtitles, that's a big deal.
Yes, because every step forward is a step closer to fluency. And speaking of steps, one method I've seen work wonders for some people is shadowing. Have you tried it before?
Oh, definitely. Shadowing is when you listen to someone speaking and then immediately repeat what they're saying, mimicking their tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. It's like singing along to a song, but with conversations or speeches.
Exactly. It's such a powerful way to train your ears and improve your speaking skills at the same time. Plus, it forces you to focus on the little details, like intonation and stress.
And what's great is that you can use any material for shadowing: movie dialogues, podcasts, YouTube videos, even audiobooks. The key is to pick something that matches your level and interests.
That's right. And don't worry if you don't get it perfect at first. The goal is to practice, not to perform. Over time, your fluency and confidence will improve naturally.
Another effective technique is storytelling. Take a simple story or even your daily routine and try to tell it in English. Start with basic sentences, and as you get more comfortable, add more details and complexity.
I love that idea. It's like creating your own mini English lesson. And the best part is that you're practicing vocabulary and grammar in a way that's relevant to your life.
Yes, and it's also a great way to build confidence in speaking. The more you practice telling your stories, the easier it becomes to speak spontaneously in conversations.
That's such a good point. And while we're on the topic of speaking, let's not forget about listening. Active listening is such a crucial skill. It's not just about hearing words, it's about understanding the meaning behind them.
Exactly. And one way to practice active listening is to ask yourself questions while listening to something in English. What's the main idea? How are they expressing their opinion? Are there any new phrases or idioms you can learn?
Yes, it keeps your brain engaged and helps you focus on the content. And don't be afraid to listen to the same audio multiple times. Each time, you'll pick up on something new.
That's so true. Repetition is your friend when learning a language. And speaking of friends, having a study buddy or joining a language exchange group can make such a difference.
Absolutely. Learning with others adds an element of accountability and support. Plus, it's a chance to practice real conversations in a low-pressure environment.
And it's also fun. You can play games, have debates, or even role-play different scenarios in English. The more creative you get, the more engaging and effective your learning becomes.
That's the beauty of language learning. It's as dynamic and diverse as you make it. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, so it's all about finding what works best for you and sticking with it.
Right, and staying consistent is the key. Even on days when you feel stuck or unmotivated, just doing a little bit can keep the momentum going. It's like planting seeds. They might take time to grow, but the results are worth it.
I couldn't agree more. Language learning is a journey, and every effort you make brings you closer to fluency. The key is to stay curious, stay motivated, and most importantly, enjoy the process.
And another thing, don't underestimate the power of music when learning a language. Singing along to songs in English can improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and even vocabulary. It's like a fun workout for your mouth and ears.
Oh, I love that. Songs are such a great way to pick up colloquial expressions and cultural references too. Plus, they stick in your memory because of the melody. It's like effortless learning.
Exactly. And while we're talking about memory, let's touch on mnemonics. Creating mental images or associations for new words can make them so much easier to remember.
That's true. For example, if you're learning the word bark, you can picture a dog barking next to a tree's bark. The connection between the meanings makes it more memorable.
Yes, and mnemonics work even better when you personalize them. The sillier or more meaningful the association is to you, the better it sticks.
Another tip for retention is spaced repetition. Reviewing material at increasing intervals helps move information from short-term to long-term memory.
Absolutely. Apps like Anki or Quizlet make it so easy to use spaced repetition. You can create your own flashcards or use pre-made decks for specific topics.
And don't forget about using technology in general. There are so many amazing tools and resources available now. From language learning apps like Duolingo to AI tutors and speech recognition tools, there's something for every aspect of learning.
That's such a good point. And let's not overlook the importance of customizing those tools to fit your goals. For example, if you're focusing on business English, find resources tailored to that.
Exactly. Tailoring your learning to your needs keeps it relevant and motivating. And speaking of relevance, immersing yourself in English-speaking communities online is a game changer.
Totally. Platforms like Reddit, Discord, or even Twitter have communities for almost any interest. Engaging with others in English around topics you're passionate about makes it feel less like studying and more like participating.
And the beauty of that is you're not just practicing language, you're also building connections and broadening your horizons. It's such a holistic way to learn.
Yes, and real-life practice like that can't be beaten. It complements more structured learning perfectly. Speaking of which, journaling in English is another underrated technique.
Oh, I love journaling. It's such a personal way to practice writing and self-expression. You can write about your day, your thoughts, or even create fictional stories.
And if you don't feel confident about grammar, just start simple. Write a sentence or two each day. Over time, you'll notice improvements in both your vocabulary and sentence structure.
That's right. It's all about progress, not perfection. And while we're on the topic of writing, trying out creative tasks like blogging or even writing poetry in English can be so rewarding.
Definitely. It pushes you to think outside the box and experiment with language in new ways. Plus, it's a fantastic way to discover your voice in English.
And let's not forget about humor. Watching English stand-up comedy or funny shows can help you understand cultural nuances, wordplay, and informal speech.
That's a great one. Humor is such a natural way to connect with a language. Even trying to make your own jokes in English can be a fun challenge.
Agreed. The more playful and creative you are, the more enjoyable learning becomes. And the best part? There's always something new to explore. You're so right, Daniel. The beauty of learning English or any language really is that it's a journey that constantly evolves. There's always a new word, phrase, or cultural nuance to discover. It keeps things exciting and fresh.
Absolutely, Emily. And for anyone feeling overwhelmed, remember that every little effort counts. Whether it's reading a single paragraph, learning one new word, or having a short conversation, it all adds up over time.
Yes, and don't forget to celebrate the small victories. Maybe you understood a movie without subtitles, or you ordered coffee in English without hesitation. Those moments are proof that you're making progress.
Definitely, progress isn't always about giant leaps. It's about the consistent steps forward. And one last tip from me: be kind to yourself during this process. Learning a language is a skill, and like any skill, it takes time and patience.
So true. And surround yourself with positivity. Find a supportive community, stay curious, and remind yourself why you started learning English in the first place.
And on that note, we hope these ideas and strategies have inspired you to take your English learning to the next level.
Keep exploring, experimenting, and enjoying the process. Remember, you're not just learning a language, you're opening doors to new opportunities, cultures, and connections.
Thank you for spending this time with us. We're cheering you on in your journey, and we know you've got what it takes to succeed.
Until next time, happy learning. Bye.
Bye.